Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here to the start of this week's Fan Fridays, this time featuring a battle from Local Maple, who has brought something that I have kind of talked about in the past, but is also a very interesting concept. What happens if you just take Metronome on Scizor and you spam that Bullet Punch until everything dies, because it's that damage snowballing under priority, so effectively you can just kind of one-shot everything pretty easily, it sounds like. So let's go and see how it ends up playing out in a double battle. I would have been a little more interested in seeing a single battle for this one, just like throw it into the 3v3 battle spot, use it until you win, even if it like fails a billion times and you get that one just camped Metronome win, that's going to make it interesting enough. But ooh, okay. Oh, I was about to say, I'm trying to figure out what's going on right here, but that's going to spice things up insanely because we now have a water absorb on the Nihilego, and that is actually pretty terrifying sounding. So Tapu Fini going to be ejected out from that hit, going into the Scizor. I guess at least that's a part of the strategy. Water absorb's not going to worry about that. And then Oranguru is going to get the Trick Room. So whatever's happening here, pretty much Tapu Fini is bait, gets switched out, and now we have a priority on that Trick Room. But, ooh, okay, this actually like extra triply spices things up. So Nihilego does not want to deal with any of this stuff. Oh, wow. There's a lot of layers here because Tapu Fini is going to give the terrain, which means Swagger is actually good to go. And it's a Fury Cutter. I was expecting the Bullet Punch. So now we're actually like doubling, well, not doubling because Metronome is, I think, 20% boost every time. So it's like we're just going to keep going for insane amounts of damage, and then the Metronome stacking with the bonus damage on top of the ×2 into the Instruct. I think this is actually the hardest damage scaling we have ever seen before, and Fury Cutter actually going to get Technician boosted while gaining Stab, so that's scary. And then the Instruct comes in, so now we're going to see more damage on top of more damage, and that's just Lapras dead. Like, there's no way it can survive that after taking such a big hit initially. And how much will it do against the Charizard? This is where the numbers come in. Remember, guys, Charizard X gains a boost to its defenses. I mean, we're doubling doubles right at this point, and then gaining like another 40% on top of it. So I never thought about that. Okay, so initially I said Metronome is kind of just a busted, like not good busted, just broken, terrible item, and the opponent forfeits right off of that. You can't stop that. Like, once you get it set up, you win in 4 turns, because it's like one shot, Instruct one shot, Instruct one shot. So the team actually going way deeper than I imagined. Let's go and check out that next battle, but first I'm going to talk about how Metronome works. Okay, guys, there's a lot of really cool stuff to break down with this strategy. I feel like for Generation 8, because unfortunately the way the YouTube algorithm works is that it kind of like takes series and it takes like different, so say you upload a certain episode of a certain series or like on a certain day, well, YouTube's actually going to subscriber burn that day harder than another day. So Fan Fridays is massively subscriber burn because I was doing 5, even like anywhere from 3 to 5 videos on every Friday. So YouTube just says, all right, we're cutting out Fridays if people don't watch them, which is really unfortunate that the sub box kind of manipulates that hard. And because of that, I think this strategy will need to be shown. Also, just talking about Metronome again, I might just cover like every item, every Pokemon, almost every move, depending on how large the 8th generation gets. So get ready for that on Nintendo Switch. But this is where the Metronome is a very interesting item. Boost the power of a move by 20% every time it has been used consecutively, up to a maximum increase of 100%. So I think I might have touched on this in like my best and worst items video, because there's just some really bad items that look good inside of Pokemon. And this seems like one of them. Like, wait a second, if I keep using the moves consecutively, I get the largest damage increase from an item in Pokemon. No other item gives you that 100% consistently, but you have to build up to it for a pretty long time. And then when you compare it, even Life Orb is going to be 30%, 30%, 30%, then it's going to be 20, 40, 60. So Life Orb gives you the opportunity to switch up your moves, which is going to still reward you with high amounts of damage, use Sustain if you need it, which is why we don't really see it that often. And even Choice Item, Metronome effectively locking you in like a Choice Item means that you're going to get more damage faster than you would without that Choice Item. So Metronome is just going to take too long to amp up and then not have enough reward once you break from it. And then that's kind of what we also see in the Fury Cutter. Starts off at 40 power, doubles every time you use it, and it's had some crazy buffs. You know, Fury Cutter starts off with a base power of 10, Every time it's used, it will double up to 160. Then it, in Generation 5, buff to 20. Still not good enough. So cutting out a lot of the turns. Generation 6, massive buff to that Fury Cutter. Just 40, 80, 160. Insane amounts of damage. So by using that Instruct, we're actually capping the damage incredibly quickly. Also, that first usage on the Technician is going to be boosted. So 40 into 60 into Stab, that's already a lot of damage. And then double, Stab. Also, I think that Swagger was a little bit of overkill, to be honest. I'm wondering, like, since Fury Cutter's already doubling, the Swagger only matters when you already have a 160 base power move that's doing insane stuff on top of the Metronome. By that point, you're already using it 3 times, so we're getting a further 60% damage on top of some of the highest base power, on top of Stab, and on top of one of the strongest hitting Pokemon. I wonder how no, you can't use Mega Scizor because Metronome, but then that goes into another stat breakdown. How much more effective is the Mega over the Metronome? Actually, not as effective as I thought, because you think Mega Scizor, I thought it had, like, I knew it had, like, a high attack, but it's actually not that much of a gain over regular Scizor. It's mostly a defensive buff, so if you want a more durable Scizor at the cost of damage, that could work. In this, okay, so for Swagger, I say for Swagger, you should have Mega Scizor instead of Metronome. Without Swagger, the regular Scizor does good, because, yeah, look at this, after that one use, so after you've instructed, you're already gaining more damage than the Mega Scizor, because you gain 10%. Like, that's it. From Scizor to Mega Scizor, only 10% more damage. And that means you're actually losing off of, like, Life Orb, any other weirdness that the Scizor might want to pull. So, not really the best option. But kind of breaking down, like, how this damage amplification is some of the most insane stuff I've ever seen. And actually, Metronome has viability under that Instruct. I'm surprised we haven't seen that happen before, because Metronome, otherwise, I feel just gets outclassed by a lot of other items that are trying to do the same thing, as in increased damage. So, let's go into this next battle and see how it ends up playing out. Trying to expose some flaws in the strategy. Like, Mawile does bring priority, does bring a lot of scary damage, and if the opponent doesn't use their first turn to set up like we saw with that Lapras, could be a little different. But I think I really want to say that it might be too much to try to get, like, that Swagger terrain going, especially if you're trying to set up this hard. They bring in a Tapu, actually no, Tapu Koko wouldn't really matter because you're going to overset their terrain. So attack's going down, not really the worst thing on this Mawile right now. And then we're going to see the Mega. So it depends on who Mawile targets. I don't think the Mawile is going to want to target a Fairy type, unless it goes for that Play Rough. But you also don't want to Sucker Punch, because you know that the Oranguru is going for setup. So, wow, Mawile actually trying to Sucker Punch the Oranguru, maybe the Tapu Fini. So we're going to see what Tapu Fini is up to. Eats that super effective hit, Thunderbolt, whatever, switches out with the eject button. So actually getting a still very ideal first turn. And then going into the Scizor. So, okay. Looks like Tapu Fini, just in case for that Instruct. But no Trick Room. Makes things a bit fancier. And then going into the Arcanine. I feel like this is going to go a lot worse for Scizor now. Because that's a Fire-type move, and Scizor cannot really handle those too well. Going to Protect. So it looks like Protect Scizor, eat the move. Mawile's, you can't use Sucker Punch against Oranguru. That's just the fact of life. So then going into that Trick Room, if Trick Room was already a double Instruct onto the Arcanine would be really interesting to see if that's enough to KO. So Mawile's going to Sucker Punch. That's going to fail. Oranguru with the Swagger. And even then, like, Swagger, starting off with initial double damage is worse. Okay, and then Scizor with the Baton Pass. So I guess if there's a Fire-type, this is all over the place. I guess if there's a Fire-type Pokemon, you can really just bait out the opponent. So this is a multi-layered, insane cake of shenanigans, is all I can say about this strategy. Like, it's actually a multi-tool ready for almost anything in kind of a crazy way. So now we have Wishy-Washy. It's like 130, 140 defense with a resisted hit against an Arcanine. Not really going to matter too much. And now it also is rocking the high defenses. So Wishy-Washy comes in with that Earthquake. Actually going to tag Oranguru, but Wishy-Washy under Trick Room is already one of the scariest Pokemon out there. So giving it that Swagger, hitting it pretty hard, and then Oranguru is going for the Instruct. So Oranguru actually tanking it out really well, but then just going for the Instruct. So Oranguru takes a big hit, makes sure it cleans the field, and then it looks like that's kind of it. But I really wanted to see that. Okay, I'm gonna go and set up these damage calculations. Because now that we're dealing with Metronome, if you're Swaggering, that means you're only getting one hit for double damage on a lower base power. So that means if you're Instructing, you're getting the double right there, as well as the extra 20% on the Metronome. And I'm trying to remember, I don't think Metronome applies for the first time that move is used either. It's only on the second, so it's consecutive, which means you're actually behind, and that is going to be another forfeit. So Trick Room +2 Wishy-Washy, that's game. Metronome instructed Scizor, that's game. Battle's just in super quick with this. Okay, so looks like Smogon is trolling me a bit right here, because look at this. There is no Fury Cutter on the damage calculator, so that means I'm just using Scizor at 40 base power. Effectively going to do the same thing, give us all those boosts in the Technician and stuff like that. Also looking into the damage amplification, because you can actually use Metronome as an item, and then you can select how many times it's used. So once, no boost, twice, 20%, 3 times, we're at 40%, and then I guess maybe in a lot of situations, or not a lot, but these situations where you are being resisted by an incredibly bulky Pokemon, you do need to have that swagger boosting, which is again like the crazy thing about the layers and how this strategy breaks down, because yeah, now that we're going into that insanely boosted off the Metronome, into the Instruct, into all these other things with the usage of the Scizor, boom, one-shotting onto that Arcanine. Now there is some debate as to whether it's using the move, like if Instruct actually causes Metronome to apply again. I would imagine so, because we saw that Instruct caused Fury Cutter to do more damage, so I'd imagine that it applies in the same way as the Metronome, even though some people will say that it's the selection of Metronome that is what matters, and not the actual usage if you do get called for the move again. So overall, I think we can just kind of show this and be like, wow, that's a lot of damage right there. And also, Arcanine, yeah, unless you're already like maximum set up. So it looks like even with the +2 under Trick Room instructed, you're not going to be able to find that KO. The maximum amount of damage is about 80% right there, so Arcanine would not go down. And if it has a Citrus Berry or Confusion Berry, you need that massive one-shot. So Scizor's already set up. Yes, it can take out the Arcanine. If not, then you do make the switch, but that's why the team worked incredibly well with itself. And then going into the Charizard. So Charizard, like, it's scary to think about how much damage comes in right there. Let's also dial this back to level 50, because that's how it's automatically done. Still finding a better chance to KO over the other Pokemon. Still not just the double tap, so you can't first time Fury Cutter into the second time Fury Cutter on top of like no Metronome boosting. But if you do have that, actually that is with the +2. So it looks like the +2 is needed for the Charizard, is needed for all that stuff. The damage sounds like it gets a lot more exponential than that, but it really doesn't. So yeah, I guess that was what Local Maple learned. It's like, okay, I can one-shot pretty much anything. Like, let's go and bring out just a regular old, I'm gonna do Silvally, not Sylveon. Silvally, level 50 into no boost like that. Look at that. Boom, no +2. When you're at that final amplification, that's a KO right there. And unfortunately, there's not any chip damage that's coming across. Unless like Tapu Fini gets a hit off before it ends up getting switched out with that red card, you will need to just kind of like either hit a really weak Pokemon. So Silvally also on that higher end of just tankiness right there. Like, you're not going to see a sweeper with 95 bases. So what you need to do is 2-shot to amp up against a sweeping Pokemon, or something that you can hit like super effective, or just like a not tanky Pokemon neutral, and then after that you one-shot everything. The swagger helps against those resisted hits, and that's going to be it. So if you guys enjoy the video, hope you guys enjoyed Fan Fridays as well. Fury Cutter coming through for the sweep. Hope you guys enjoy the video, have a great day, have a great weekend, have a great everything, and I'll see you guys next week for Fan Fridays.